accepted, challenge accepted. The attitude is always challenge accepted. Challenge accepted, challenge accepted. The attitude is always challenge accepted.
Now, as we head into our final talk of the day, we're diving into a topic that stirs the pot, sparks the debates, and leaves no one indifferent. People and generations. Talking to a boomer, a millennial, and a Gen Z is like debugging three completely different programming languages.
Boomers think email is cutting edge, millennials are all about Slack, and Gen Zs would prefer to just send them a TikTok explaining the project.
But we have the right person to tell us more about that.
Paweł, sorry? Okay, microphone, idva. Paweł Zajączkowski will dive into these generational differences and how they shape our interactions in IT.
Paweł has seen a lot. Finnish telecoms, Swiss banks, Polish development, and now a Bulgarian conference.
So,
wait for the mic and give a big round of
1, 2, 3.
applause for Paweł Zajączkowski!
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I'm very happy to see you here all. My name is Paweł. For just a brief introduction about myself, I used to do a lot of coding in Java, but then I moved to the dark side, and now I'm taking care of several teams of people at Xibia, Poland. And I will tell you a story about different generations and differences between them, and how to deal with them in our industry. So first of all, to be on the same page, let's have a little bit of background, right? So what are those generations? What is the thing with differences? Is it actually real, or is it just a myth? Okay? And in the second part, we are going to dive into 4 particular generations that you can actually find at the workplace. And now, disclaimer, this is a very memetic topic, right? There are a lot of memes about boomers and millennials fighting each other, right, over the internet. I was trying to bash everyone equally, but please don't get offended. Let's keep our distance, right? So first, I have a short movie for you depicting how people born in different decades might react to hitting themselves in an arm in the frame of a door. So start with the 70s. The 80s. Yeah, sometimes it might look like this. All right, so let's start with a background. So what's the thing with all those generations? The idea of generations, as you normally see with millennials and boomers, is related to the Western world, right? The definition of Western world is kind of fluid, like Bulgaria and Poland used to be in the, let's say, the Eastern Bloc, right? Now we are in NATO and European Union, we are kind of like in between. But the general idea is, depending on the event that you witness in the first 20 years of your life, how you were raised, and what technology have you used, it kind of shapes you. And now we can segment the general population into those demographic cohorts of roughly 20 years old. Sometimes they are shorter, sometimes they are a bit longer, but we can segment them, and we can see some commonalities, right? That they have statistically something in common. The theory is like around 100 years old. You can see some works from the 50s by Karl Mannheim. That was the time when it was translated to English, actually, because he was, I think, writing in German. And now you have those pictures. You have some events in the world, you have some technology, and there's a boat. Right? You might be wondering, what the hell is with this boat there? So the boat will act as a shotgun over the chimney in the first act of a play. If you see the shotgun over the chimney in the first act, you know that we are going to be firing from that shotgun, right? So with the boat, we are going to be rowing this boat with our different generations later. All right, so in order to be on the same page, this is the picture from Wikipedia, by the way, so just a little bit addition on the right. This is the structure of our generations. So those are two trapezoids. The left one are the oldest people in the given generation. The right one are the youngest, and you have the birth year, 18 years old, more or less, 60, then 70. So this is like a productive period at the top. And hopefully people live a little bit longer than 70. So we have generation alpha, which is just born basically up to 11, 12 years old. We have Gen Z, which is entering our work market up to roughly 27 years old. We have the millennials, 28 to 43, more or less. We have Xers, which are up to late 50s. And we have baby boomers, so 60s and 70s, and then some. Now, this is the example from real population. This is from Poland, but in Bulgaria, I believe it's pretty similar. What you can notice here is that we have this red bump of baby boomers after the Second World War, so people in 60s and 70s. Then we have Xers and millennials, so young Xers, older millennials are another bump, right? So they are children of baby boomers, basically. And then you have Gen Z and the youngest generation Alpha, and you would expect another peak, but yeah, demography is changing a little bit, right? People don't have as many children right now, so it kind of flattens out now. So how does it look in our industry? This is the example of how many people in two companies were born in certain years. We are interested in this distribution, right? So we can see that the top company is actually from Poland, a software house from Poland. And you can see that the generation Y, so millennials, is the bulk of people, almost 80%. Right? Then we have a little bit of Gen Z on the right, green one. We have a little bit of generation X on the left, so late 40s, 50s. The other example is from more Western country, from Netherlands, another software house. And here we can see that, again, millennials are the bulk of people there. Maybe not that bulky, maybe closer to 70, 60-something percent. There's just a little bit of generation Z, a little bit less than the top example, but there is much more Gen X, right? In these old West countries, people were starting work in IT usually a bit earlier, right? There is a lot of people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s even, that are still working in IT. You can even see on the far left, on the bottom, those red droplets are the baby boomers. So those are actual examples. So moving on, are generation differences actually a reality or just a myth, a stereotype, right? If you search Google for generational differences, you will find a lot of guides on how to do it. With millennials, with baby boomers, you should do this and that, so it would be nice. If you add a word myth to the search, you'll find a lot of articles saying that this is all bullshit, right? We are all the same, equal, it's just stereotypes, you can't judge people by age. So, which is it now? That's the question. Which one is true? Typical answer in IT, it depends, right? Also works on my machine, right? So there is a little bit truth of that, if we talk in terms of statistics. Now, there are several layers of complications on this. So if you look at some literature, some covers of magazines from years ago, there was always this youngest generations that was difficult to work with, like they had high expectations, they didn't have respect for elders, etc. So 50 years ago, it was baby boomers, basically, right? Then 30 years ago or something, it was Xers. When I was starting looking for a job like 15 years ago, it was millennials are bad. And now you can see a lot of articles in social media about Gen Z. So this perception shifts with time. Also, if you look at more scientific literature, you can see a lot of articles about generational conflicts in many places and times on Earth. Like you can see ancient Greeks, basically, there was some conflict between younger people in Athens and older people in Athens. There's some medieval times in America, etc. So it's basically all over the place. Now, also, if you look at some research of generations in the marketplace, there's usually 4 generations at the time. And they are divided in two halves. Like there are two young ones and two older ones. And about this, the younger of the older ones usually say that they are the last adult generations, right? The two youngest are not really serious, right? They don't know stuff. So now they say that Xers are the last adult generations. But if you look at the research 20 years ago, right, it was baby boomers who were the last adult generations, and Xers were those not kind of silly people, right? So perception changes. And also, we change as we age, basically. We have statistical data. These are the 5 traits of our personality, mind traits that are not correlatable with each other. And basically, most of our personality shapes in the first 20 years of life, but even after that, for next decades, stuff is changing a little bit. So our conscientiousness goes up, meaning conscientiousness is like an order, right? We are more prepared, we are more ordered people, and it usually goes up as we age. Agreeableness, so we are a bit more diplomatic, it's easier to talk to us, usually at least to some point. Right? So our openness goes down, so we have our ways, we are used to doing stuff a certain way, we are not that open to new experiences. And our extraversion goes down, right? So if you are 20, going for a pub crawl is a great idea. If you are in your 40s, maybe let's get a little bit more sleep, okay? This might be better. And neuroticism, so emotional instability goes down, so we are getting more emotionally stable. I can colloquially say that we don't give a damn anymore that much about what other people say about us, right? We are more stable. And also, there are other stuff, right? So first of all, everyone is different. Like we can look at some statistics, but the most important thing is what nervous system you basically randomize at character creation at birth, right? And this is like the half probably of your personality. Then the first 20 years of your particular upbringing is important, not the statistics of the divorce rate of parents in a given generation, right? But you. So this is important. Also, we have cultural differences. So people in Bulgaria, in Poland, in Japan, in Germany, in the States would have a different baseline of behavior and personality. And only on top of that, you have the generational differences, right? So it got a little bit fuzzy. But what I wanted you to get out of this first part is that there are some statistical differences, but you should not use them as a hammer in your toolbox with dealing with people, right? This is millennials, this is boomers. No, it's like a very delicate tool. Sometimes it's useful, but be careful with that. All right, so let's move to our particular generations now. We'll start with our baby boomers. So baby boomers born just after the Second World War, so in their 60s and 70s in general, we can call them the analog generation because when they were first starting job, stuff was done in pen and paper way. Only later they adapted to technology and computers. Right, some influences. There was a Cold War, so you never know if it's going to be a nuclear apocalypse just in a moment. We had a great progress with transportation. So in 60 years, we went from basically wooden paper planes to going to the moon. Television and radio are the mainstream ways of media, right? If you ask Americans, probably the JFK assassination would be an important event that they witnessed live, basically, almost. And computers are still this thing used in laboratories mostly, not a tool of everyday work. So now, how to deal with baby boomers? They prefer probably face-to-face contact. They have high power distance. This means that if somebody has a formal title, if he's a boss, for instance, this person, or even a doctor, like a medical doctor, right? This person out of the box gets respect, right? So they respect the formal structure, the hierarchy. They are very loyal. Often they worked in one company for decades, basically, right? They value hard skills, meaning that it's important what you can do technically or with your hands, not how smoothly you can talk, usually. And if you want to make them happy, you should put them in some kind of formal position, like a manager, boss, a mentor that can share knowledge about life and business acumen with younger colleagues. All right, I have some examples for you of baby boomers that were influential in tech. I usually went over them, but we have kind of limited time budget. So if you don't recognize any of them, I encourage you to check later. There are slides of this presentation online. I will give you a link later. You can catch me. So do check them. And now let's move to our next generation, the GenX. Yeah, so currently 43, 44 to late 50s. The name came from the unknown because there was a lot of social changes in society, and they didn't know how those children will end up in the end, right? So unknown X. There was a book, Generation X. There was a song, Generation X, and it kind of stuck. Sometimes we can say the latchkey kids, because there were a lot of single parents back then. A lot of children were coming to an empty house, and they had to have this key, right, on the leash on the neck, and they had to open the door by themselves, and hence latchkey kids. And we can call them digital immigrants. So often in the early childhood, computers were not yet that popular, but later they migrated to computers and digital technology. Some influences. So we have the end of Cold War and Soviet Union, right? There was some uprising, there was some martial law, there were some nuclear reactors blowing up, maybe not very connected, but a little bit. There were some influences from the Western world. First computers, maybe not PC computers, a little bit delayed in our part of Europe as well, maybe like a Commodore or Spectrum or stuff like this. First cell phones is rather like thing for a director or a boss, right, of a big company, not commonly used, but out of popular electronic, we have the Walkman here. And now, how to deal with Generation X, right? They value autonomy a lot. This is statistically correlated with this thing that they were often kind of left out by their parents a little bit. They have to deal on their own. And they tend to focus on results. They tend to be focused on their career. Right? They value authority still, not as much as baby boomers, but still quite a lot. So formal procedures, formal rules. They think on themselves as, I'm a developer, I'm a manager, not I'm Paweł or I'm Anna or whoever. So they kind of blend this career and life quite a lot. And because of that, if you are a team leader, a boss, or just a good colleague, you should, be on the lookout if somebody is maybe working too much or going into burnout state or just being too serious at work, let's say. All right, we have examples of people from Generation X that had quite a lot of influence on our industry. And let's move on to millennials, the bulk of people in current IT. So millennials, roughly 28 to 43, also known as Generation Y, because Y is after X, of course, but also why they need to know why something is done, not just you tell them to do something and they will do it. It's not that easy, right? There should be a reason for that. Sometimes they are called the 90s kids. Disclaimer here, it's about being kid in the 90s, not being born in the 90s. So it's kind of shifted. Like, so if somebody is born in 85 or something, he was a kid in the 90s. We can call them digital natives. So basically, since the young age, usually computers were around, right? Usually not necessarily connected to the internet yet, but a lot of millennials probably played some games as young children even. So we can call them the digital natives. Some influences. So we have the first dial-up connections, right? The blazing speed of 30 kilobytes per second and hoping that nobody will pick up the phone while you're downloading the MP3 file. Right, we have the height of globalization, basically. So we have the European Union, the NATO is expanding. We have the rise of social network. The GG is actually a communicator from Poland from the early 2000s. We have popular cell phones, which are actually interesting, not like we have now, the black rectangle and that's it. Right? Then it was, whoa, magic. If you look for important events, if you ask again Americans, it's probably 9/11. And by the way, this is kind of like a border between Gen Z and millennials, because the oldest Gen Z were 4 years old at the time. So Gen Z won't remember 9/11, but millennials can remember, for example, what they were doing when they learned about this unusual situation. Out of popular electronics, we have the Discman. There was this crisis of 2008, 2009. I was actually looking for a job at that time, my first job, and it was a little bit tricky. And later it was difficult to get a raise because it was it's crisis all the time. Get off, right? And yes, computers, personal computers are now quite widespread. And how to deal with millennials, right? The millennials are the most educated cohort so far, right? They are keen on technology. We have this term of helicopter parents, meaning that if a millennial kid has some issues, then the parents would come, drop in a helicopter, like help them get back, right? And it has some effect on us later. We are actually the first generation that really seriously took the life-work balance. So we work to be able to live, not to be able to work. And we have much lower, I will be saying we because I'm millennial. Actually, I'm almost in between millennial and Xers. I'm 41 now, so sometimes it's called xennial, something between, but I like the name elder millennial. There's a sketch on Netflix called Elder Millennial. So there's this much lower power distance, so the boss is more like your buddy, right? He has to or she has to earn the respect and authority. It's not given out of the box. Right? There's much more flexibility in millennials. They prefer teamwork much more than Xers. Like the Xers are, I will do this myself. Millennials are, okay, let's do it together, statistically, right? They are often they are freelancers. They are more keen to changes. They are more direct and more open than the previous generations. And to have some examples, probably you might not recognize most of them, I guess would be, or at least some of them. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg is very well known, but the rest might be a bit tricky. But let's move to our Gen Z. Right. So 11 to 27, sometimes called, not very originally, post-millennials, right? Or snowflake, because everyone is different, like a snowflake server, this falling from the sky. And we can call them online natives because they were connected to the internet from the beginning. Basically, they don't know offline life as millennials do. The influences, the COVID-19 pandemics was the greatest probably. So it was the remote schooling, maybe looking for a first job remotely, right? We have magnificent technology, so you have a device that can have access to all the knowledge in the world in your pocket, or you can watch funny cuts on the internet on this device. The globalization is kind of shaky, right? We have this big conflict in Europe now. We have a lot of tensions all over the world currently. Supply chains are kind of compromised, and we are not sure what's going to happen next. There is much greater awareness of climate stuff, right? The climate is changing, and we should do something with this. There's a big polarization, especially in social media. So there is this left bubble or right bubble, to simplify, and they don't even talk to each other anymore because they can't, right? They're very separated. It's kind of not very good. And technology is doing a great leap, especially with AI currently. We can think of it as a magic, basically. All right, so what to do with Gen Z? They are even more educated than the previous generations, and they have all the knowledge that they would need basically at the tip of their fingers, right? Whatever you need to do in life, there's basically a tutorial on YouTube about this, right? Which is handy. They are used to globalization, they are used to diversity, to having friends all over the world from all walks of life. They are very individualistic. So for instance, if you are a team leader and you have a team in bank, you shouldn't force them to have the same wallpaper and login screen with a logo of a bank if they don't ever see any client. Right? It's kind of it doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's let Gen Z be more individualistic at work, if you have ability to make that happen. Because the approach to work is also a little bit different. It's not just this sad place that we go to earn money. It's more like a place that could be also fun and chill and nice. Right? A few other things, they value greater cause, right? So they don't only look for income, maybe some other things are also important, like if the company is ecologic or if the company cares about local communities or stuff like this. Gamification works quite well in many processes with Gen Z. They are very entrepreneurial generation because also they have a lot of means to monetize what they do. You can do content and put in social media. You can do some handcrafting stuff and set up a shop, internet shop to sell it very easily, right? They value a quick feedback loop, so it's also probably coming from social media. People are commenting, liking, so don't wait a year if you are a boss or a leader to give a feedback to your Z colleagues, just do it live. And they are even flatter in terms of hierarchies and power distance. They tend to create those soft networks, informal networks at work. If you are a boss of Gen Z, you have to earn it, basically, right? It's not given out of the box. Yeah, I don't have examples, unfortunately. I was trying to look for examples, but there are people from Gen Z that are doing great businesses and have great ideas, but it's just too early yet to tell which of those are really this big thing like Facebook or Apple or whatever. So maybe in 5 years, if I'm going to do this presentation again, then I will try better. All right, so I promise you the boats. So now we are going to be rowing. Let's imagine you have crews from different generations and a captain. You take the crew, boomers crew. We have a captain. Captain is, we are rowing, and the boomers will be, okay, captain, let's row, right? Let's put on X generation as the crew. The captain is, we are rowing, and the X are, hey, hold on, where are we going? How fast should we go, right? Do we have some device to measure our speed? Can we check what's the progress? If it's provided, then yeah, that's okay, we can row. Then we have millennials. The captain is, let's row. The millennials are, hey, hold on, buddy. There's an engine. There's an engine on this thing, right? Why don't we just start the engine and relax a little bit? And the captain is, yeah, this is the special nature zone, right? There are some wild animals like beaver, fishes, whatever. They can be disturbed by the sound of the engine. You cannot have the engine on here. You have to either sail or row. Right? There are those places in many countries. And then you can get fined if you start the engine also. So this is a good explanation. They know why. Then captain is okay, we can row now. We know why. It's good. And with Gen Z, we are rowing. Right? And Gen Z might ask, okay, captain, but is the island income or revenue actually the good island? Maybe we should visit some other islands also along the way. Right? This ecology or some other greater cause. Right? That could be a metaphor for our 4 generations that we can encounter at work. But in general, the story about generations is like an evolution of a workplace. So each generation had some expectations that what we would like to have at workplace. Like we should have some goals that we understand, like we should know why we are doing something. Maybe we should have some life-work balance. Maybe the place should be more chilled, right? And in the end, each of those generations fought for some of those things, right? And they get it. And in the end, all the previous generation also gets the benefit of all of that. So it's kind of like a fluid progress in our workspace. All right, so get to an end. This QR code leads to my LinkedIn. If you would like to join and high five virtually, you're welcome to. You can also find me on Twitter. And I have a blog which has a Java in the name, but it is no longer true. Okay, it's true for the older articles, but I don't write about Java for years. It's general software development and peopleware, let's say. And you can find my talks, slides from this talk, actually the longer version, because the original version was 1 hour, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, then it was 45, then it was 40, then it's 27, yeah. So it's a bit shorter now.
Do you have any questions? You have 3 minutes for questions?
Yes, and we have 3 minutes for questions, folks.
We have Gen Zs here. Maybe you can ask something. Maybe these are the future Gen Z influentials and influencers, and there is a question there.
Okay. First of all, very nice presentation. Thank you. Very interesting. So my question is, from your experience, what are some of the stereotypes that you've encountered with each one of the generations?
Could you repeat, please?
What are some of the stereotypes that you've encountered in your experience with each one of the generations?
Yeah, I think I have around 55 people currently I was a boss for like 80 previously. So I have people from 22 to 55, if I'm correct. And some stereotypes, actually, maybe it's an accident, but my older colleague, who is 55, so he's an Xer, is also working really a lot. So it would match with this overworking attitude. Some of my colleagues that are very young and have like 1 year of experience or 2 years of experience are very bold, for instance, where they come to get a raise, right? So it's also a stereotype about Gen Z, but it's actually more complicated. There's this Dunning-Kruger effect there's this curve about your competence and your confidence, and it turns out that when you are about 1 or 2 years into your field, you are very competent, you are very confident, but not yet that competent, and only after that you lose some confidence and gain some more competence. So it's common that because junior developers or early mid developers are very difficult sometimes to negotiate, I would say.
Thank you.
You win a chocolate. There's a Gen Z question.
Another question.
Yes.
I have a question. Have you ever had problems with people who are older than you, but in, I guess, lower positions? Have you ever had Have you ever had problems with like respect or something coming from people who are older than you, but are in a lower position? So you're like their boss, despite them being older.
Not really, to be honest. I have like maybe just few, like 3 or 4 people that were older than me. But as I was showing those personality traits, the agreeableness goes up, so they are often easier to negotiate with, easier to talk to in general. But I was thinking that maybe if the difference was bigger, because if you are 41 and you have someone who is 55, it's not that big of a difference. If you are maybe 25 and you are boss of somebody who is 45, then it's a bit tricky, right? So for me, it was not that bad, I would say. Right.
Thank you. The next question she'll be asking the speaker's corner. Let's send Paweł off the stage with big round of applause. Paweł Zajączkowski.
Thank you.